Yo fam, check this out. The multiverse just glitched hard and Vegeta is literally crash landing in the worst spot possible. Let's dive in.
A jagged tear in the fabric of reality rips open, unleashing a burning vessel from the depths of space, spiraling wildly toward an unsuspecting world below. Inside the dying pod, the Prince of Saiyans battles gravity itself, his pride refusing to break even as his ship turns into a literal tomb. The sky of the land of fire ignites, a crimson scar marking the arrival of an uninvited god from a completely different dimension. Deep in the serene forests, the peace is shattered, ancient trees trembling as an unknown terror tears through the upper canopy like a bullet. There's no turning back now. The descent is inevitable, a fiery streak of doom heading straight for the heart of the hidden village.
Take useless pile of junk!
The horizon burns, the wind howls in agony, signaling that a power far beyond the ninja world is about to make its mark. Piece by piece, the vessel gives way, yet the Saiyan prince remains unyielding, bracing for the inevitable brutal impact with the earth. Gravity pulls harder, the ground rushes up to meet the invader, and the countdown to destruction is nearing its final, explosive second. He won't let fate decide his end. He channels his own life force, a desperate attempt to soften the blow, or perhaps just to survive. With a flick of his wrist, he forces the craft away from the village, his instinct not to save, but to keep his landing site clear.
Not here! I won't go down without a fight!
The canopy snaps like dry twigs, the earth beneath preparing to bear the weight of a warrior who defies the laws of this world. It's a violent carving into the landscape, a trench of destruction that screams of raw, unbridled kinetic energy. The final stop, an immovable object meets an unstoppable force, and in that split second, reality itself seems to hold its breath. A supernova of force erupts, swallowing the forest in a vortex of fire and debris, leveling everything in its path. Silence follows the roar. A thick, suffocating smoke rises, masking the carnage where a new player has just entered the game. Whatever survived that blast is coming out, and it's not going to be happy about its landing. Where the hell am I? This place, it reeks of weakness. The stage is set. The prince has arrived, and the ninja world is about to realize that some gods don't play by their rules. The heavy hatch blows off with a deafening screech, signaling the arrival of a predator who plays by no one's rules. From the smoldering ash, a single armored boot touches the scorched earth, claiming this completely unknown world as his own territory. The prince of all Saiyans steps into the chaotic atmosphere, completely unfazed by the catastrophic crash that just destroyed his ship. Instantly, his advanced scouter goes absolutely haywire, unable to process the strange, mystical chakra saturating the air of this ninja world. The digital interface screams in warning, the numbers scrambling wildly as it struggles to comprehend an energy source it was never built for. Sparks fly as the delicate alien technology overloads, the glass cracking under the immense pressure of the unfamiliar atmospheric interference. With a sharp pop, the lens shatters completely, rendering his only navigational tool completely useless in this strange and hostile dimension.
The magnetic interference on this primitive mudball is completely frying my gear. What an absolute joke.
Unbothered by the loss, he crushes the broken device in his palm, choosing to rely on a skill far superior to any machine. Closing his eyes, he shuts out the physical world, tapping into his primal instincts to map out the energies of this strange dimension. Like a ripple in a quiet pond, his mind sweeps over the landscape, feeling the subtle vibrations of life scattered across the territory. He brushes past the tiny, insignificant power levels of ordinary humans and resting beasts, searching for something truly worthy of his attention. Without warning, a tidal wave of pure, concentrated malice slams into his heightened senses, forcing his full, undivided focus toward the village. A monstrous, boiling red aura roars in his mind's eye, radiating a chaotic evil that feels incredibly ancient and violently unstable. His eyes snap wide open, the pupils dilating as the thrill of a high-stakes hunt washes over his battle-hardened mind.
Bingo! Now that is one massive, nasty power level. Exactly the kind of fuel I need to get out of here.
He drops into a low, predatory crouch, his muscles tensing like coiled springs, ready to unleash absolute, unbridled destruction. The sheer density of his rising energy causes the shattered earth around him to defy gravity, floating upward in a silent display of power. A blinding shockwave of white-blue aura explodes from his body, vaporizing the remaining debris and illuminating the dark forest. With a deafening boom, he launches himself into the air, the sheer kinetic force leaving a massive, cratered footprint behind him. He tears through the thick canopy like a living missile, ripping ancient trees up from their very roots in his devastating wake. Ascending into the open sky, the apex predator locks onto his ultimate prize, driven by an insatiable hunger for power. Shattering the sound barrier, he streaks across the horizon toward the devastated Hidden Leaf village, ready to take what he needs by force. The so-called gods of this world are about to face a harsh reality check from a warrior forged in the stars. The once proud ninja village is now nothing but a massive, smoking graveyard, completely flattened by the wrath of a self-proclaimed deity. Pinned down by demonic black receivers, the village's final hope struggles in vain, his remaining strength bleeding out into the dirt. Hovering above the broken hero, the architect of this nightmare stares down with cold, emotionless eyes, utterly convinced of his own supremacy. In his twisted mind, the massacre he unleashed wasn't a crime, but a necessary lesson to force the world into submission.
You think you're the hero of this story, kid? True peace only comes when you finally understand what real pain feels like.
His loyal angel watches in silence, believing that this brutal execution is the final step toward their ultimate twisted vision of peace. Driven entirely by pure, unchecked rage, the demonic fox Chakra begins to boil over, screaming out into the endless void. But the universe has other plans. The wind suddenly dies, the sky darkens, and the air itself becomes suffocatingly heavy. An unnatural, crushing pressure descends upon the crater, rewriting the very laws of gravity before the true terror even lands. For the first time today, the self-proclaimed god of this world feels a sudden, ice-cold chill of absolute dread. Even the legendary Ninetales hesitates, its ancient instincts screaming in raw panic at the sheer magnitude of the approaching energy. Tearing through the clouds like a literal meteor, a force entirely alien to this dimension plummets toward the battlefield. He breaks the sound barrier again and again, leaving shattered sonic rings in the sky like halos of pure destruction. Realizing the sheer catastrophic danger, the false god raises his hands in a desperate bid to repel the absolute inevitable. But the pathetic parlor tricks of a local shinobi mean absolutely nothing to a warrior forged in the gravity of space. Boom! The prince touches down, an earth-shattering impact that violently rewrites the landscape and mocks their petty little war. The ground buckles and snaps like brittle glass, a massive tidal wave of solid rock erupting from the sheer kinetic force. Even the strongest fighters are swatted away like mere insects, utterly powerless against a shockwave of this insane magnitude. The so-called god is thrown backward, digging his heels into the dirt just to keep from being blown completely off the battlefield. Shielded by a jagged slab of bedrock, the young ninja can only stare in absolute awe at the towering column of dust. As the massive dust cloud settles, a terrifying, suffocating heat radiates from the epicenter, carrying an energy unlike anything this world has ever felt. With a single explosive flare of his aura, the smoke is banished, revealing a silhouette forged in blood and battle. Every step he takes commands absolute authority, crushing their weapons beneath his boots like fragile, useless toys. The Prince of all Saiyans stands tall in the ruins, folding his arms as he locks eyes with the so-called deity.
A god? Seriously? You look like a pale freak wearing a cheap bathrobe. Let me show you what real power looks like.
Bro, did he just call Pain a pale freak in a bathrobe? Vegeta's disrespect is literally unmatched. He is about to humble this man so hard.
To be interrupted is one thing, but to be mocked by a mortal? The self-proclaimed deity's fragile ego shatters completely. Blinded by sheer arrogance, he raises his hand, fully intending to erase this disrespectful anomaly from existence forever. He funnels a catastrophic amount of energy into a single point, preparing a gravitational push meant to vaporize a mountain.
You dare mock a god? Almighty push!
A catastrophic wave of pure gravity erupts forward, a force so absolute it tears the very bedrock apart in its wake. Jagged boulders become lethal projectiles, riding a tidal wave of destruction designed to reduce any living creature to blood and dust. But against a body forged under intense gravity and endless war, the divine attack feels like nothing more than a gentle breeze. He doesn't block, he doesn't dodge. He simply leans in, letting the full force of the attack wash completely over him. The gravity wave completely swallows the area, carving a horrific trench through the landscape and burying everything in suffocating darkness. Conan watches the dust settle, fully convinced that no living creature could ever survive a direct hit of that magnitude. Pinned and helpless, the young ninja strains his eyes through the suffocating smoke, waiting for the inevitable gruesome aftermath. The false god lowers his hand, perfectly satisfied that his terrifying divine judgment has cleansed the battlefield once again. But out of the deafening silence, the unmistakable heavy sound of boots crushing gravel echoes from the heart of the destruction. Not a single scratch, not a single drop of blood. He walks out of the apocalypse completely, entirely unharmed. Arms still crossed, he shakes his head in sheer disappointment, completely unfazed by the ultimate technique of a god. For the very first time, pure, unadulterated terror strikes the heart of the renegade user, shattering his divine delusion completely. Desperate pain unleashes a continuous wave of gravity, but the Saiyan just leans in, tearing right through the invisible wall. His sheer physical density is so immense that the gravitational attack literally bends and breaks around his heavily muscled frame.
Is that it? A little breeze? Let me show you how to actually hit someone.
Screaming in absolute denial, the false deity pours every last ounce of his remaining life force into holding the barrier. The supreme gravity technique solidifies into a visible dome, cracking under a physical pressure it was never meant to withstand. With a single casual step, the absolute defense is shattered into millions of useless, glowing fragments, leaving the god entirely defenseless. The rebounded energy rips the dust away in an instant, setting the stage for a brutal, unavoidable physical execution. Moving faster than the legendary eyes can even process, the Saiyan closes the gap instantly, cocking his fist back. Time seems to freeze entirely. In that agonizing fraction of a second, the false god finally understands true, absolute helplessness. No energy beams, no flashy magic, just the pure, unadulterated perfection of a devastating physical strike aimed to kill. The impact is catastrophic. The sheer kinetic force shatters his ribs instantly, sending a lethal shockwave ripping straight through his spine. The puppet strings are violently severed. The invincible Deva path crumples like a fragile doll, utterly destroyed by a single basic uppercut. Sent flying like a piece of worthless trash, the broken god smashes into the crater wall, completely removed from the equation. Dismissing the so-called god as nothing more than pathetic trash, The prince immediately loses interest in his broken toy. The angel falls to her knees, her entire reality shattered by the realization that true power is entirely merciless. But the Saiyan didn't come here to play hero. His sharp senses locked back onto the massive, volatile energy source. Driven mad by the catastrophic threat, the legendary Ninetales boils over, desperately trying to tear its way into the physical world. Unhindered by the toxic, burning atmosphere, the apex predator casually strolls straight into the absolute heart of the danger zone. Sensing its impending doom, the ancient beast projects its terrifying visage, roaring with all the fury of a trapped animal.
Aw, look at the little puppy trying to act tough. You've got exactly the juice I need, furball.
With a single, effortless stomp, he shatters the indestructible rods, brutally clearing the path to his ultimate prize. He yanks the broken hero off the ground like a rag doll, staring dead into the eyes of the raging demon inside. The kid is entirely gone, completely consumed by the feral, desperate survival instincts of the trapped mythological beast. Focusing his immense power into a single, razor-sharp point, he prepares to perform the most violent surgery imaginable.
Hold still, kid. I promise you this is gonna hurt a lot more than you can possibly imagine.
With brutal precision, he plunges his hand straight into the core, violently ripping through the mystical seal, holding the beast captive. Inside the mental cage, the impossible happens. The ancient prison shatters, flooded by a blinding light of absolute terrifying power. The mighty demon fox is suddenly grabbed by the throat, completely powerless against an intruder. It cannot even comprehend. Reality itself seems to tear apart as a colossal geyser of pure ancient chakra is violently ripped into the physical world. It's a brutal tug of war against the laws of physics, pitting ancient ninja mysticism against the raw, unyielding strength of a Saiyan. Torn completely from its host, the colossal beast materializes in the physical world, its sheer size dwarfing the ruined landscape entirely. Furious at its violent eviction, the legendary demon lunges downward, determined to crush the arrogant insect that dared to touch it. But the jaws that can crush mountains are stopped dead in their tracks by a single bored, effortless block. With a flick of his wrist, he projects a massive, unbreakable cage of pure energy, trapping the beast entirely.
Perfect. This ought to hold just enough juice to get my ship off this miserable rock.
Through absolute mastery of key manipulation, he crushes the colossal entity down, forcing a mountain of power into a microscopic space. The ancient demon screams in silent agony as its mythic form is violently compressed into nothing more than a functional battery. With a blinding flash, the terrifying struggle ends abruptly, leaving behind a chilling, absolute silence over the battlefield. When the light fades, the colossal nightmare that once terrified nations has been reduced to a simple, glowing trinket. A hyper-dense, blazing core of infinite energy, perfectly contained and ready to fuel his journey back to the stars. To the ninja world, it was an unstoppable force of nature. To the Saiyan prince, it's just a spare part. But the extraction carries a fatal price. Stripped of his lifelong burden, the young hero's body instantly begins to shut down. Standing over the fallen boy, holding the ultimate prize, the prince must decide whether to leave him to the dirt or forge a new path.
Bro, no way! Did Vegeta actually just kill the main character? I know he's ruthless, but this is getting super dark.
Stripped of the tailed beast, the young ninja's life force rapidly drains into the cold, unforgiving earth beneath him. His pulse drops to a whisper, the vibrant warmth of his spirit replaced by the chilling grip of impending death. The Saiyan prince stands silently above the fading boy, the glowing prize of infinite energy safely secured in his grasp. He analyzes the dying kid not with pity, but with the cold, calculating eyes of a veteran cosmic warlord, deciding the boy's sheer stubbornness deserves a second chance. The prince reaches into a small pouch hitched to his armor. He retrieves a single, unassuming green bean, a mystical relic from his own universe, known for absolute miraculous healing. To anyone else, it looks like a simple seed, but to a Saiyan, it is the ultimate defiance of death. With a precise, effortless flick of his thumb, he sends the senzu bean shooting through the air like a bullet. The tiny green seed strikes its mark perfectly, forcing its way past the dying boy's lips and down his throat. A primal survival reflex triggers an involuntary swallow, sending the miraculous alien medicine straight into his failing biological system. Instantly, a surge of pure, unadulterated vitality explodes from his core, violently jump-starting his stopped heart back into a furious rhythm. His deep blue eyes snap wide open, completely cleared of the deathly haze as raw oxygen floods back into his lungs. He violently arches his back and gasps for air, his muscles bulging with renewed explosive stamina that defies all medical logic. Disoriented and overwhelmed, he stares at his own trembling hands, completely unable to process how he is still drawing breath. But the confusion shatters the moment his eyes lock onto the glowing red orb casually resting in the alien invader's palm.
What? What did you do? Give him back right now, you bastard!
Fueled by sheer panic and raw adrenaline, the young ninja scrambles to his feet, entirely forgetting the massive power gap. He launches himself forward like a desperate wild animal, throwing all logic away in a frantic bid to reclaim his lifelong companion. Channeling every ounce of his freshly restored physical strength, he throws a desperate heavy right hook aimed straight for the prince's jaw. But the prince simply raises two fingers, catching the desperate full-power strike with the casual boredom of swatting a bothersome fly. The kinetic force of the blocked punch ripples through the air, but the Saiyan doesn't even shift a single millimeter backward. He stares dead into the boy's furious eyes, utterly unimpressed by the frantic, sloppy display of emotion-driven martial arts.
You're pathetic. You finally get your own life back, and the first thing you do is cry over a parasite?
With a lazy flick of his wrist, he swats the boy aside, sending a harsh physical reminder that borrowed power means absolutely nothing.
Nah, bro really just backhanded the main character like a mosquito. Vegeta is not playing around today, chat. This is about to be the hardest boot camp ever.
Without a single glance backward, the alien prince casually strolls toward his ruined spaceship, completely dismissing the fallen ninja as a harmless insect. But the blonde kid doesn't know how to stay down, his sheer stubbornness refusing to accept this deeply humiliating defeat. Approaching the ruined ship, he tosses the hyper-dense core into the engine bay, ready to jumpstart his ticket out of this dimension. Completely blinded by loss and rage, the young shinobi launches another desperate, reckless charge, right at the alien's unprotected back. He doesn't even bother turning around. With a mere thought, a colossal wave of dense, suffocating energy explodes from his body. The atmosphere itself turns to lead. A terrifying gravitational field slams down, crushing everything within a 50-foot radius instantly. Slammed face first into the bedrock, the kid gasps for air, his muscles screaming under the weight of 10 times normal gravity, completely unbothered by the crushing pressure he created. The prince casually begins repairing his ship with his bare hands. Every single ounce of the boy's willpower is pushed to the absolute limit just to twitch his fingers against the devastating downward force. Glancing over his armored shoulder, the veteran warrior watches the pathetic struggle, deciding it's time for a brutal reality check.
Look at you, face down in the dirt because you lost your little pet. Is this all you are without it?
The harsh words cut much deeper than the gravity. He grinds his teeth so hard they might crack, refusing to accept the insult.
With a subtle flex of his energy, the gravitational pressure multiplies, driving the struggling ninja even deeper into the shattered crater floor. Through blurred vision and suffocating weight, he stares up at the towering alien, realizing his ninja magic can't save him here.
You relied completely on borrowed power to survive. If you want to be a true warrior, stand up on your own 2 feet.
The brutal truth finally sinks in. It wasn't just physical weakness keeping him down. It was a lifelong crutch that had just been kicked away. Channeling a deeply buried primal strength he never knew he possessed, he plants his palms flat against the trembling bedrock. The Saiyan pauses his repairs, his sharp eyes narrowing slightly as he senses a tiny, genuine spark of physical willpower igniting behind him. Bones creaking and muscles tearing, the resilient kid forces himself up onto his hands and knees, fighting a literal war against gravity. Heavy drops of sweat splash against the scorching rock, evaporating instantly as the sheer atmospheric pressure threatens to crush his spine entirely.
I don't need anybody's power to prove you wrong!
A faint, barely visible smirk crosses the prince's face. It's a silent, fleeting moment of absolute respect for a warrior fighting a completely impossible battle. Against all biological odds, the young shinobi begins to rise, his legs shaking violently under a weight meant to shatter solid steel. Satisfied with the brutal lesson, the alien warlord turns back to his fully powered ship, leaving the boy to conquer his own physical limits. Against all physical logic, the human boy locks his knees, standing tall and unbroken inside a gravity field meant to crush solid steel. The hesitation in his eyes vanishes completely. Stripped of his lifelong crutch, he finally discovers the unbreakable core of his true self. Standing on the ramp of his vessel, the Saiyan prince pauses, quietly observing the sheer, impossible willpower radiating from the young warrior.
Maybe you aren't completely useless after all. Don't lose that fire, kid.
The heavy hatch seals shut, locking away the alien entity that just violently rewrote the entire power hierarchy of this world. The legendary, catastrophic power of the Nine-Tails is reduced to nothing more than premium fuel for a galactic joyride. With a deafening roar, the vessel detonates off the ground, riding a pillar of demonic fire straight toward the heavens. The crushing gravity vanishes in an instant. The boy stumbles, but catches himself, feeling lighter and stronger than ever before. Accelerating into the stratosphere, the alien ship punches a massive hole through the dark clouds, leaving this fragile world behind. With a violent tear in the fabric of reality, the dimensional rift opens and swallows the prince, vanishing as quickly as he arrived. The unnatural storm breaks. As the tear in space heals, the very first gentle rays of a new dawn begin to touch the earth. He stands completely alone in the ruins of his home. The village is destroyed, and his greatest weapon has been stolen forever. But as he clenches his fist, he doesn't feel weak. For the very first time in his life, he feels entirely whole. He may have lost a monster, but thanks to a ruthless alien prince, he finally found the true strength of a man. A new path has been violently forged. The shinobi world will never be the same, and neither will Naruto Uzumaki.
Wow, what an absolute masterpiece. Naruto lost the fox but gained that raw Saiyan mindset. Smash that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments who Vegeta should humble next.